A star so short they hid him in trenches, an actor who secretly couldn't ride his horse, and a crew member almost buried alive. The 1953 classic Shane is famous, but its behind-the-scenes story is a disaster.
Prove it.
All right, Mr. Wilson. Challenge accepted. We'll check back with Wilson later on. And how about you? Stick around, because we're about to uncover the bizarre secrets Hollywood never wanted you to know. These are cinema secrets you missed in Shane. Number 1. The 2-year delay. The movie Shane was completely filmed and finished in 1951. But if you wanted to see it, you had to wait. The movie didn't hit theaters until 1953. This 2-year gap was almost unheard of, and Paramount Pictures, the studio, was furious. The movie was finished, but it was being held hostage by one man. This wasn't a problem with actors or the set or the weather. The man holding the film hostage was its own director, George Stevens. He was obsessed with getting it perfect. After filming ended, Stevens locked himself in an editing room for 15 solid months. This is an insane amount of time. Most movies are edited in just a few weeks, but Stevens was known for being meticulous. He would look at the film frame by frame. He often filmed his actors from multiple angles, and then spent over a year just deciding which angle to use. This mysterious delay drove the studio bosses completely mad, cost them a fortune, all in the name of George Stevens' relentless pursuit of perfection. Number 2. The A-list cast that abandoned ship. The iconic cast you see in Shane was never supposed to be in the movie. Director George Stevens wanted huge A-list stars. He originally cast Montgomery Clift to play the role of Shane, and William Holden to play the homesteader, Joe Starrett. These were two of the biggest stars in the world, but Clift and Holden both decided to do other films instead, and the whole project almost fell apart. Stevens was left with no stars and a movie that was about to be abandoned. Number 3. The 3-minute casting frenzy. With his top stars gone, the movie was nearly dead. A frustrated George Stevens went to the head of Paramount, Y. Frank Freeman, and asked for a list of any actors who were still under contract. He just wanted to see who was available. Stevens looked at the list, and in just 3 minutes, he picked his new cast. Alan Ladd as Shane, Van Heflin as Joe Starrett, and Jean Arthur as Marion. The most iconic cast in Western history was chosen in less time than it takes to make popcorn. Alan Ladd, now the star, was under contract to Paramount and earned $145,000. But the villain, Jack Palance, earned just $12,500 for 10 weeks of work. With the cast locked in, filming finally moved forward. But as production dragged on and costs ballooned, the studio eventually decided it was time to cut its losses. Number 4. The tycoon who changed Hollywood history. The budget got so out of control that Paramount Pictures gave up. They had lost all faith in the movie and in their director. They looked at the numbers and saw only a total financial disaster. They decided to cut their losses and sell the entire film, just to get rid of it. They approached the famous billionaire Howard Hughes and offered to sell him the movie lock, stock, and barrel. They didn't care if it was a masterpiece. They just wanted to get some of their money back. They were ready to wash their hands of Shane forever. This is where the story gets weird. At first, Howard Hughes declined the offer. He said no. But then, Paramount showed him a rough cut of the movie. Hughes was so impressed that he immediately changed his mind and offered to buy it on the spot. This sent Paramount into a total panic. The man they tried to dump their trash on suddenly wanted to buy it. This made them realize maybe this movie wasn't trash after all. They suddenly understood that they might be sitting on a masterpiece. Number 5. The B-movie that became a flagship film. Paramount had a sudden and total change of heart. The studio had originally planned to just dump Shane as a cheap B picture. This was the kind of movie that would play as the second, less important film in a double feature. It was never meant to be a big, important movie. But after Howard Hughes tried to buy it, they pulled the movie back. They decided to make it their biggest flagship film of the year. It was a huge gamble that paid off. Number 6. The author who hated his hero. One person was furious about this new cast. The man who wrote the book. Jack Schaefer, the author of the Shane novel, hated the choice of Alan Ladd. He couldn't stand it. He felt Ladd was completely wrong for the part. When someone asked Schaefer if he liked the movie, he famously replied, "Yeah, I did. All except for that runt." He was talking about the 5'6" star of the movie, and his height was Ladd's biggest secret. At only 5 feet 6 inches tall, he was considered too short for an actor by many studios. It was his biggest insecurity. This became a huge problem when the villain was cast. The actor playing the evil Jack Wilson was Jack Palance, who stood at 6 feet 4 inches tall. This created a 10-inch height difference. The crew knew it looked comical when they stood next to each other. To hide this, they used every camera trick they knew. In scenes with other actors, Ladd would stand on hidden boxes or mounds of dirt. In other films, they even dug trenches for his co-stars to stand in. For Shane, when Ladd and Palance face off, they are almost always filmed far apart from each other, often across the room, to hide the massive height difference. Number 7. Hollywood's reigning mystery woman. The actress who played Marion, Jean Arthur, was a famous recluse. She was 50 years old at the time of filming and was famous for her total hatred of publicity. She refused to give interviews, rarely signed autographs, and almost never left her home. Life magazine even called her Hollywood's reigning mystery woman, second only to Greta Garbo. Her appearance in Shane was a shock to Hollywood. She only accepted the part as a personal favor to her friend, the director George Stevens. Number 8. The star's last ever movie. This movie was a film of lasts and firsts for Jean Arthur. It was her first movie in 5 years, and it would be her very last film performance ever. After Shane, she completely retired from the screen. It was also the only movie she ever made in color. Every other film in her long career had been in black and white. But her age created a secret problem that the crew had to hide from the audience. Number 9. The secret 13-year age gap. The problem was the age difference between the actors. Jean Arthur was 50 years old, but her co-star Alan Ladd, the man who portrayed the subject of her romantic tension, was only 37. This made her 13 years older than him. She was also 8 years older than Van Heflin, the man who played her husband. In the 1950s, this was a big problem for Hollywood. The crew had to find a way to make this look believable, so they turned to a classic camera trick. Director George Stevens used a classic Hollywood technique. He told his cameraman to film all of Jean Arthur's close-ups in soft focus. This technique blurred the camera lens just slightly. It hid any lines, and, combined with the right makeup, made her look radiant and timeless. But Jean Arthur wasn't the only star who needed camera tricks. Number 10. The actor who couldn't ride a horse. Alan Ladd's secret was much, much bigger, or rather, much smaller. But while Ladd was worried about his height, his terrifying 6'4" villain had a secret that was even more embarrassing. Jack Palance played one of the most memorable bad guys in movie history, but he was a theater actor from New York. He had zero experience with horses and was secretly terrified of them. He also had no idea how to shoot a gun. His fear of horses led to one of the weirdest and funniest tricks in the film. In one of his key scenes, Palance was supposed to ride up to the Starrett Ranch, get off his horse, and then get back on. He just couldn't do it. He failed to remount the horse over and over. Finally, director George Stevens had an idea. He filmed Palance getting off the horse. Then, in the editing room, he just ran the film in reverse. The shot you see in the movie of Jack Palance getting on his horse is actually a shot of him getting off, played backward. Number 11. The director's 119 take obsession. Director George Stevens was known for his relentless perfectionism. Remember the 15 months of editing? On set, that same perfectionism pushed everyone to their limits. In one scene, Shane shows young Joey how to shoot a gun. It should have been simple, but Stevens had them film it again and again. Ironically, Alan Ladd disliked guns and was uncomfortable around them. His fancy gun twirling in the climactic showdown wasn't performed by Ladd at all. That was stuntman Rod Redwing. Earlier, when Shane shows off for Joey, that actually is Ladd on screen, but he was given a specially modified revolver that was easier to handle. Stevens kept rolling, pushing for absolute perfection. They shot that one simple scene 119 times. And his madness wasn't just for the human actors, it extended to the animals too. Number 12. The dog who wouldn't act. In the famous funeral scene, the Homesteaders bury their friend, Tori. The scene called for a dog to stand by the grave and look in sadly. But the dog refused. No matter what they did, the dog would not look into the open grave. It wasn't scared, it just wasn't interested. After hours of failure, George Stevens came up with a bizarre solution. Stevens ordered the dog's trainer to lie down in the bottom of the grave. The dog, wanting to see its owner, immediately ran to the edge and looked in. Stevens got his shot. They then lowered the prop coffin, which was loaded with rocks, into the grave. Just then, the harmonica player on set started playing Dixie. The crew got so emotional and caught up in the sad moment, they forgot the trainer was still in the grave and started shoveling dirt on top of him. They had to yell "cut" and pull the poor man out before he was buried. Number 13. The bear suit scare tactic. The dog wasn't the only animal that gave the crew trouble. In the corral fight scene between Shane and Joe, the horses were supposed to look terrified, but they couldn't have been more relaxed. Director George Stevens came up with a rather creative solution. He had two men suit up in bear costumes and flail their arms to send the horses into a convincing frenzy. Number 14. The cannon in a garbage can gunshot. Stevens saved his most groundbreaking ideas for the film's violence. He hated the sound of guns in movies. He thought they sounded like tiny pops from a cap gun. He wanted the violence in Shane to sound real, brutal, and terrifying. So he invented a completely new sound effect. He took a large caliber weapon and fired it into a metal garbage can. The cannon-like boom that echoed out was recorded and used for every gunshot in the film. Number 15. The stunt secret that changed movies. Stevens didn't just change the sound of violence, he changed the look of it. Having witnessed during his World War II service the profound effects a bullet could have on a man, realism was important to him. In old movies, when someone got shot, they would just grab their chest and fall over. Stevens thought this was fake. To make his deaths look real, he had the two main victims, Elisha Cook Jr. and Jack Palance, rigged with hidden wires. When their characters were shot in the movie, a stagehand off-camera would violently yank the wire. This is what gives the deaths such power. The actors are literally pulled off their feet and slammed backwards. The famous director Sam Peckinpah later said, "When Jack Palance shot Elisha Cook Jr. in Shane, things started to change." Number 16. The Oscar-winning Looming Mountains trick. The film's violence was groundbreaking, but its visual beauty won an Oscar. The movie won the Academy Award for Best Cinematography. One of the biggest secrets was how they filmed the Grand Teton Mountains. They look huge and overwhelming in every shot. That was a camera trick. The cameraman, Loyal Griggs, placed his camera very far away from the actors. He then used a long focal length lens to zoom in. This technique flattens the image, making the mountains in the background loom over the tiny actors, making them look engulfed by the landscape. Number 17. The 1950s car hiding in the Old West. Even with all that Oscar-winning care, the crew made some huge, hilarious mistakes. In the very first scene of the movie, Shane rides his horse toward the Starrett farm. The camera shows the beautiful, empty valley, set in 1889. But if you look closely in the far distance, you can see a modern white vehicle driving across the valley. And they missed another one. Later in the film, when Joey is talking to Shane, you can see a second modern vehicle pass by through the open window. If you watch Shane today on a DVD or Blu-ray, that first car is gone. The studio digitally erased it. But you can still see the car in the original 1953 movie trailer. Number 18. The animal-loving recluse. Jean Arthur wasn't just a recluse. She was a fierce defender of animals. She made a habit of inspecting the film's livestock herself, making sure every creature was cared for properly. When one poor piglet got sick, she halted production until it was rushed to a veterinarian. Sadly, it didn't make it, and, fearing her reaction, the production heads hastily found a stand-in piglet to keep things moving. Number 19. The prankster in the final scene. The final scene of Shane is one of the most moving farewells in movie history, a wounded Shane telling young Joey he has to leave. It brought nearly everyone on set to tears. Everyone except 11-year-old Brandon DeWilde. As Alan Ladd struggled through his emotional goodbye, DeWilde couldn't resist goofing off. Each time Ladd delivered his lines, the boy crossed his eyes and stuck out his tongue, breaking Ladd's concentration and ruining take after take. It wasn't the first time the young actor had tested the crew's patience. Throughout filming, DeWilde had splashed people with mud, wandered off set when his scenes were called, and was reportedly encouraged by Jean Arthur, who had taken a shine to him. But this time, Alan Ladd had had enough. He finally turned to the boy's father, who was standing just off camera, and shouted, "Make the kid stop or I'll beat him over the head." After that, DeWilde straightened up, and the scene was finally completed. Number 20. A friendship forged on Shane, and the tragic fates that followed. Alan Ladd and his co-star Van Heflin developed a genuine friendship during the making of Shane. The two men grew close on set and remained friends for years after the film was completed. Sadly, Ladd's story ended far too soon. Just 11 years after Shane was released, he passed away in 1964 at the age of 50 from a combination of alcohol and sedatives. Van Heflin was deeply affected by the loss. His wife later recalled that one of the few times she ever saw him cry was when he learned of Alan Ladd's death, a testament to the friendship that began on the set of Shane and endured for the rest of his life. The tragedy didn't end there. Brandon DeWilde also died young. On July 6, 1972, he was driving a camper van in Colorado during a rainstorm. He lost control, hit a truck, and was pinned in the wreckage, suffering a broken back, neck, and leg. He died at the hospital at only 30 years old. Well, Wilson, I think we've proved our point. Shane might be a masterpiece, but behind the scenes, it was a downright mess. And I've got to say, that bit about you struggling to mount the horse, pretty funny stuff.
I wouldn't push too far if I were you.
All right, I don't want to end up like Tori. Some call Shane the greatest Western ever made. Others say it's overrated. What's your take? Drop your thoughts below and let's settle it in the comments. And if you enjoyed uncovering these cinema secrets, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And we'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.